back, everybody. So today's video is going to be specifically geared around firearm safety and weapon safety. We've broken the video into 4 sections. The first section is going to be the cardinal safety rules, and then we'll talk about weapons storage at home, and we'll talk about a family safety plan a little bit, and then we'll go right into children and weapons training and education, and then we'll talk about range safety and range etiquette. So what I want you to know first and foremost is you're responsible. You're responsible for firearm safety. Like Smokey the Bear said, only you can prevent forest fires. Am I dating myself? Same thing with firearms. Only you. Once you've purchased that gun and you've made a commitment that you're going to use that firearm to protect yourself and protect your loved ones, now you got to go take it a step further. You have to make sure that it is safe when it's not being used, when you're not carrying it. So you're responsible. New shooters, you have to practice the firearm safety rules, the cardinal safety rules, until they become second nature. And that takes a while. Experienced shooters, have you become complacent? You know, are you not following all the safety rules at all times? Again, that's just a matter of kind of brushing up and reviewing the safety rules and like, yeah, I need to stick to this. I want to make sure everybody understands. Most firearms accidents, injuries, and deaths are a result of a failure to follow either one or a combination of all of the firearm safety rules. That's it. You follow the rules, no one gets hurt. These rules, you have to follow them whenever you're handling the firearm. It's not an option. You have to follow them. All right, so I keep saying rules and rules and rules, right? Not my rules. These rules were formed and adopted, and we adopted them as an industry from Colonel Jeff Cooper. All right, rule number 1, you're gonna treat every gun as if it's loaded. So you wanna assume that every gun that you pick up is loaded. And then when you assume it's loaded, even if it's unloaded, you're gonna treat it as if it's loaded. So after you visually and physically inspected it and you know that it's unloaded, you're gonna treat it as if it's loaded. You're not gonna do anything with an unloaded gun that you wouldn't do with a loaded gun. So just kind of follow that around. Just keep that in mind. You have to know the condition of your weapon. You're gonna check the condition of your weapon on a regular basis, especially if you've walked away from it, or maybe somebody else handled it, or you sat it down and you were cleaning it and you come back to it. You want to make sure that before you pick it up and start handling it, that you check it and make sure that it's unloaded. Never take somebody's word that a weapon is unloaded. Never take somebody's word that a weapon is unloaded. You have to verify that it's unloaded yourself. All right, so rule number 2, never let the muzzle, and when we talk about muzzle, we're talking about the dangerous end, the bad end. So never let your muzzle cover or cross anything you're not willing to destroy. So what you're gonna imagine is you're gonna imagine there's a laser coming out of here. And I'm not talking about like a little puny, like a cat, entertainment type laser. We're talking about like a Darth Vader, light your hair on fire type laser, right? So you're gonna pretend there's a laser coming out of here. And anything you cross that crosses this laser, you're gonna damage it. So you wouldn't cross an arm with that, right? So you wanna make sure you come around an arm. So anything that you're not willing to destroy, don't point at it. All right, so rule number 3. Rule number 3 is probably the one that's most violated. And I see it on a regular basis, especially when I'm dealing with new shooters. It's keep your finger off the trigger until you've made a conscious decision to shoot. So what that means is that you're gonna keep your finger high up on the frame until you have made a conscious decision to shoot. That means your front sight's lined up with your rear sight, you've acquired your target, and now you're gonna physically shoot, and that's when your finger goes in the trigger. Other than that, the booger picker stays off the bang switch. All right, so keep that in mind. And there's science behind rule 3. in 2003, Dr. Inoka came out with a study that was specifically about muscular contractions. And this was at a request of Germany. So Germany was having some issues with officers having unintentional discharges. Some of their prisoners got shot, and a couple of them even died. And about the same time Germany was having that problem, and that's in the early 90s, about the same time Germany was having that problem, New York City had the same problem, or a similar problem. In fact, New York City had 63 unintentional shootings in 1990. So, and some of their subjects had been shot, and some of their subjects had died in the process. So they looked at this study, and they came up with three reasons why individuals have unintentional discharges. First and foremost, he determined that one of the main things that causes individuals to have an unintentional discharge, if they have their finger on the trigger, right? One of the things that causes them to have an unintentional discharge is a loss of balance. So if you're walking and you stumble and you're pushed off to one side, you will have a gross motor reaction. You'll try to stabilize yourself, and that will cause your hand to close, and then you will discharge the weapon. It's like to prevent a fall or that kind of thing, right? So the second rule, or the second reason that he determined is the startle effect. So if a person has their finger on the trigger and they get startled, there's a possibility, a high likelihood that they're going to discharge the firearm. That sudden shock again causes a gross motor reaction, and they will have a discharge. And then the third one, which is probably rounds it out, is a sympathetic reaction. So anything that this hand would do, this hand would probably do the same thing. So if you're going up some stairs and again you trip a step and you try to grab the rail with this hand, if you have your finger on the trigger here, guess what's going to happen? You're going to pull the trigger inadvertently, but you're going to pull the trigger. So that's why we keep our finger high up on the frame and out of the trigger guard for safety. If you have that sympathetic reaction, or if you have that shock, or if you have that off balance, guess what happens? The hand still closes, but that finger is not on the trigger in order to activate that round. And again, if anybody wants more information about Rule 3, there's a ton of literature out there. I'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. All right, so the last rule, rule number 4. Rule number 4 is you want to make sure that you know what's in front of your target and what's beyond it. So it's know your target, what's in front of it, and what's beyond it. That's rule number 4. So you want to make sure that you're not shooting somebody and then an air round may go down the street and go into a child care or anything along those lines. So you want to positively identify your target, and you want to make sure that you know what's beyond it, what's in front of it. Be certain of what you're shooting, especially in a low light situation, guys. There have been many tragedies where brothers and wives and sisters and children have been shot because someone wakes up in the middle of the night groggy, don't have all their senses. They hear something go bump in the dark. They go out with their trusty equalizer, and they see a shadowy figure. They bring up their weapon, and they pull the trigger. And that shadowy figure winds up being a brother, a sister, a cousin, whatever, right? There's a lot of documented cases where that's occurred. One, I'm a proponent of weapon lights. I believe that if you carry a firearm on your person, you should carry either an EDC light or you should carry a light on your firearm. You have to be able to see what you're shooting. All right, so those are the cardinal safety rules. All right, so let's recap. Rule number 1, you're going to treat all guns as if they were loaded. You're going to give the guns the respect that they deserve. You're not going to do anything with an unloaded gun that you wouldn't do with your loaded gun. All right, rule number 2, you're not going to point at anything that you're not willing to destroy, including your mother-in-law. All right, rule number 3, keep the booger picker off the bang button. And rule number 4, know what's your target, what's beyond it, and what's in front of it. All right, can anybody tell me what the vowels are? A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Okay, well, there are 4 cardinal safety rules, and sometimes there's a 5th. So the 5th cardinal safety rule is keep the safety on until you have put your sights on the target and you're ready to shoot. So if a weapon has a manual safety, not a passive safety, a manual safety, meaning it has a safety switch, then the weapon should be on safe until you have made a conscious decision to shoot. So when the weapon is down, safety is on. When the weapon comes up, safety comes off. When you stop shooting, safety goes on. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's a 5th rule. It's not necessarily one of the cardinal safety rules, but if you're handling rifles and shotguns or something that has a safety, it's a good mechanism by which to add another layer of safety to your weapons program. All right. So my question to you is how disciplined is your firearm skills or your safety skills? So if you're a newbie, maybe not very disciplined. If you're an experienced shooter, maybe they are. But there have been many times where a person was considered a professional and had unintentional discharges, negligent discharges, and acted very unresponsibly. So let's recap. There's a couple of them, right? There's, off the top of my head, there's the DEA agent that walks into a elementary school, maybe a middle school, and tells, very bold, very proud, I am the only one here that's got enough experience to handle this. And he's holding a Glock. Give you one guess as to what occurred. He shot himself in the leg. Now the guy was a trooper, right? Hats off, the guy was a trooper. And it's an old video. But again, that was a breakdown of the firearm safety rules somewhere, right? Now there's the other one that's more recent. That's the dancing FBI agent. He's in a club or a party of some sort, and he decides he's going to do a flip on the dance floor. He's going to show the ladies his dancing prowess. Well, the firearm falls out of his waistband. That's not very responsible. And there's a ton of them, right? You go to Google and you look up firearms fails, and there's a ton of stuff out there. So the next section we're going to talk about is going to be storage and a family safety plan. Now, the family safety plan is just that. It's not about you running around in your BBDs, clearing your house and that kind of stuff. There's plenty of YouTube channels that'll teach you how to do that. No high-speed stuff here, remember? So the family safety plan is about you sitting down with your family, sitting down with your significant other, your children, your in-laws, whatever your situation is, and deciding how we're going to treat this weapon, who's going to have access to it, and that kind of stuff, right? So first, I want you to make sure you understand when you're setting up your safety or storage plans, right, that you understand the more accessible it is, the more dangerous it is. The more secure it is, the less likely you are to be able to access it. So somewhere between having it locked up to the extreme and having it extremely accessible, you need to determine where you're going to be on that spectrum. And you have to decide that. I can't tell you that. It's your lifestyle. It's what goes on in your household. I can only give you suggestions. I can tell you what I do. I can tell you what I know other individuals do. But ultimately, you're going to have to look at your lifestyle, and you're going to have to determine what works best for you. So in developing a family safety plan, I will tell you right off the bat, you want to identify 2 things. You want to identify any irresponsible adults, and you want to identify any immature children. Those are going to be your keys. And then that will drive how you set up your safety plan or how you store your weapons. If you have irresponsible adults or immature children, It changes the dynamics. You just need to be that much more careful. So some of the things you need to ask yourself, you know, who in the house is going to have access? So is it just going to be you and your significant other? Or do you have a teenager that's extremely responsible? Or do you have your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law that's living with you, but he's a raging idiot or she's a raging idiot, you know? You got to take all those things into consideration. How are you going to store the weapons? Is it going to be one of those things that it goes in the safe and only comes out and sees daylight when it absolutely needs to? Or is there going to be some sort of commitment to carrying every day concealed, or some variation between never carrying and carrying all the time? So again, you need to look at the degrees. Where is the key or the combination to that particular safe going to be stored? Who's going to have access to it? Because I will tell you, securing a weapon in a safe and leaving the keys out is a recipe for disaster. There's a half a dozen cases that I know of in South Louisiana of individuals that have secured their weapons in safes, and the children find the keys and the children get access to the firearm. So you might as well just leave the gun on the kitchen table if you're going to do that. Have those individuals been taught safety rules, safe handling skills? If not, have them watch my video. And then when are you going to change the plan? You know, when does the plan evolve? When you have younger kids around, maybe when that idiot brother-in-law, sister-in-law moves out, maybe you don't no longer need to secure everything up. So again, the family plan's a living plan, so you're gonna have to change it as things change. If somebody moves in or somebody moves out, the plan changes. All right, so family plan is on you. If you guys have questions, concerns, or just need advice, just hit me up in the comment box and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. All right, so there are two devices that I definitely recommend for securing your firearms. One is a simple lock. Most gun manufacturers include a version of that lock with firearms because it is federally mandated. So if you don't have it, if you've lost it or whatever, at a minimum, that's what I would recommend. And there's a link to that in the description box. The other one is some sort of rapid access safe that you can keep in your nightstand. When I first purchased them, they were, finger combination type deals. Now they have biometrics. Now they have RFIDs where they wear a special bracelet, and as you get close to the box, it automatically opens up. Again, bunch of different variations. So kind of find one that works for you. So we're going to move on to children and firearms. Now, we talked about irresponsible adults and immature children. And just because you have a child in the house doesn't mean that that child is irresponsible or immature. Personally, I have a young adult in my home, and she's extremely responsible. In fact, sometimes probably more responsible than I am. When I walk in the house, I come in, weapon comes off, knives come off, radio gets thrown on the counter, and I sometimes don't think about that until the next morning when I'm getting dressed. If somebody comes over, a friend of hers, or a sleepover, or whatever the case may be, she's usually the first one to come. Hey, come get your stuff, please. She's thinking that way. So I have to go police all my knives and all my stuff and secure it. When you're talking about children and firearms, it's my personal opinion that children should be educated about firearms. Now, the degree of education is totally on the parents. It's up to you. But I will tell you, if you don't teach them about firearms, then they're going to get what they learn about firearms off the street. It's just like drugs, it's just like sex, and it's just like everything else. Okay? If you don't teach them about firearms, they're going to find out from somewhere else. All right, so I'm not going to bore you with facts. So in 2019, there are 390-ish million civilian-owned firearms in the United States. About 40% of United States households have a firearm in it. Now, I don't see a problem with that. I like to see it a lot higher than that. But when your kids are going to little Bobby's house and when your kids are going to Susie's to sleep over, does Bobby's dad or mom have a gun in the house? Does Susie's sister have a gun or something that's left unattended? That's why it's important that you teach your kids about firearms. You don't have to teach them how to shoot. You don't have to teach them about tactics and all that other stuff. You don't have to make them into like the little wick. But teach them the fundamentals and to make sure that they're safe. So in 2016, 3,000 children were injured unintentionally with firearms. Of those, about 125, 26 or so have died. Now, those are lives that did not have to be lost. Those are lives that someone didn't secure a gun, someone left a gun unattended, someone left keys to a safe unattended, whatever the case may be, right? So if you have a gun in the house, I guarantee you, your kids, if you have kids, know where that gun's at. And if you have been out of the house and left them alone, there's a high probability that they probably have messed with your gun or touched it or pulled it out while you were gone. So I believe education is paramount. Now, again, like I said earlier, you don't have to teach them how to shoot. You don't have to teach them tactics, but you got to teach them at the very minimum that they have to be responsible. It's something to be respected, right? But we all know you're responsible because you're here. You've sat through this video and listened to me bloviate. But you want to make sure that your kids are just as responsible when they go to a neighbor's house or when they go to a friend's house and you don't know what kind of weapon handling security or family safety plan they may have or may not have. So kind of keep that in mind. I personally recommend the Eddie Eagle program. So the Eddie Eagle program is a program that's endorsed by the NRA, and it basically teaches children if they see a gun or someone has a gun or whatever the case is, right? If they go to little Bobby's house and Bobby says, hey, look, I got this cool thing. I want to show you this cool thing. And they pull out a gun. What should that child do, right? So the Eddie Eagle program is really simple. It's, stop, don't touch, run away, tell an adult. So, that it breaks it down to its very core, simplistic nature. Stop, don't touch, run away, tell an adult. You have to, at the minimum, I believe that's what you have to teach your kids. At a minimum, anything after that is lagniappe. Personally, that's I believe, but you have to teach your kids that. They're going to run across guns. That's going to happen. So why not give them the tools to survive that particular encounter? Now, I'm going to read a news story because I want to get the headlines accurate. The headlines read, 44-year-old grandmother has been arrested in the shooting death of her 3-year-old grandson inside of her New Orleans East home. So the story goes on, and this is January 2016. So the story goes on that the grandmother went to go take a nap, and as she's taking a nap, though she had a weapon under the pillow, the weapon discharged and struck her grandson in the chest. Tragedy? Did it have to happen? Absolutely not. There was a breakdown there. There was a breakdown there, the proper way to secure a weapon. Putting it on the pillow is not. Even if you don't have children in the house, putting a firearm under a pillow is not a safe manner. So think about that when you're over at the friend's house. All right, so we're going to be wrapping it up. Here's the recap. One, just want to make sure you identify irresponsible adults and immature children. And at a minimum, please educate your youngsters, your children, about the Eddie Eagle program. You can look it up. They got other YouTube videos. It's an NRA product. You don't have to endorse the NRA for them to watch the video. You don't have to pay anything. It's there for their safety. All right, so you've stuck with me this long. Here we go. Finish up the last section. We're going to be talking about range safety and range etiquette. So first and foremost, what I want you to know about range safety is follow their rules. If it's a private range, public range, indoor range, outdoor range, it doesn't matter. You follow their rules. Their rules are paramount. In addition to any rules that they may have, you need to make sure you follow the 4 cardinal safety rules. Make sure you wear eyes and ears. You have one set of eyes, only one set of ears. Make sure that you protect them. I've had many close calls where I've had shrapnel or parts of parts of bullets come back and hit me on my safety glasses. That if I wouldn't have been wearing safety glasses, it probably would have damaged my vision. You spend enough time on the range, you'll see these type of things. Always wear glasses, even if you're not shooting. Even if you're just a spectator, wear safety glasses, please. Same thing with ears. I prefer doubling up. So the little small inside the ear pieces that you kind of put in there, and then wear a muff on top. That protects your inner and outer ear. It goes without saying, but make sure that if you're on some sort of medication that makes you drowsy or that makes you loopy or whatever the case is, don't shoot. Save that for another day. If you've been drinking, save it for another day. Go to the range another day. Guns and drugs and narcotics and that kind of stuff, they don't mix with firearms. All right. Make sure you wear proper attire. I've seen so many cases on the range, specifically private ranges, where women, and I'm not trying to women bash here, I'm not trying to woman bash here, but women come and they want to wear, the open shirts, and they want to show off their cleavage, and they want to take selfies as they're shooting. And I think that's great, right? Anything to promote the Second Amendment, I'm all for it. 3 T's, right? Look it up. All right, so I'm all for it. But if you have a casing that comes out of the firearm extremely hot, and if it lands in your shirt, it's hot. I've seen women do stupid things with firearms. And then they have a firearm flailing around as they're trying to get a casing out of their shirt. It just doesn't work. So make sure that you have some proper range attire. A baseball cap works. Don't wear open-toe shoes. Don't wear anything that can catch a round. I've had rounds land between my glass or casing, land between my glasses and my skin because I didn't have a hat on, and that hurts. Yeah, that burns a little bit. So keep that in mind, proper range attire. And then the last thing, guys, and this goes with almost anything. I think we don't do this enough, but leave the range in a better condition than you found it. So if you can pick up one little piece of trash, or if you can leave the range cleaner than you found it, that's always a good thing. And it doesn't apply just to the range. That applies to almost anything in life. If you can do something to make it better for the next person, why not? All right, so let's recap, kind of bring it all the way back, right? So you're responsible for safety. You know what the 4 cardinal safety rules, right? You're going to develop a family plan because you're going to talk to your family. You're going to come up with a plan on how to store the weapon, right? And you're going to educate your children, and you're going to not be that guy on the range. And if you don't know what I'm talking about that guy, you're probably that guy. All right, so guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. If you find value in the content, please consider subscribing. I am looking to put together another series here in the very near future. The next series will be fundamentals. It'll be a 3-part series. The first will be stance and grip, and then I'm going to talk about sight alignment and sight picture, and then I'll finish up with trigger control, breathing, and follow through. So please give this video a like, consider subscribing, and if you have comments or if you want to see future videos or if you have suggestions on what other videos I should post, please leave me comments. Some of the things I'm considering are concealed carry, specific to safety and different types of holsters and gear, everything about concealed carry. Another one I'm thinking about is legal versus moral responsibility. You know, why do we carry legally and morally? Another thing I'm thinking about doing is some trauma medicine. I believe that if you can make a hole, you should be able to plug a hole. So if you carry a gun, you should carry a tourniquet. If you carry a gun, you should have the skill sets to be able to save a life, either yours or somebody else's. All right, so once again, guys, please hit the notification bell so that you can get alerted as to when I post again, because I'm not going to be on a regular schedule as much as I would like to. But don't forget, keep the burger picker off the bang switch and watch the front sight.